Tell me about this, because then when you're an independent now.
Yeah.
So what does that say? That, to me, it says that you think the Republican Party is unsavable.
Unsavable. Oh, no doubt about it.
Because otherwise you would want to stay on, right, and reform it, but you think
it can't be saved.
It cannot be saved.
I've never argued with that. I've never argued that of a false equivalency. I just said there is misinformation from both sides.
Well, sorry.
I lived through COVID. Don't tell me there wasn't misinformation.
But there's a difference between...
I lived through stupid policies based on bad information and stifled information.
Things between Bill Maher and MSNBC's Joe Scarborough just took a sharp turn. Their late-night exchange spiraled fast, leaving Scarborough backpedaling so hard he looked ready to moonwalk right off the set. Maher, never one to soften a blow, took Scarborough's Trump take and tore it apart with ruthless precision. The shift was impossible to miss. One moment Joe was confident. The next he looked like he'd suddenly remembered an urgent appointment anywhere else. The tone flipped, the momentum vanished, and the discomfort set in. Oh, what exactly did Scarborough say that lit the fuse? And how did Maher respond so decisively? Stick around. We're breaking it all down, and this tea is still steaming.
Trump said that he was going to use the military and the National Guard to arrest his political opponents. He was asked if he would back off of that.
He said no.
And he said no. Yep. In fact, he doubled down. He talked about Nancy Pelosi being evil, her husband being evil, Schiff being evil, talking about arresting them. He said he was going to execute the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff because he was disloyal to him. He told another chief of staff who was a general, I wish my generals were like Hitler's generals.
It's just another day, and Trump derangement syndrome is still raging. Some people simply cannot accept the reality of Trump's presidency, so they'll twist his words, strip away context, or even invent claims outright just to keep him cast as the villain. Fear sells, and outrage is the product. And of course, Bill Maher had a response. But before we get to that, let's look at Joe Scarborough's blatantly biased take on Trump's remarks. It's a textbook example of how the narrative machine operates. Scarborough conveniently omits the full context of what Trump actually said, ignoring not just the surrounding details, but the reasoning behind the statement itself. That omission isn't accidental. It's intentional. By selectively editing the facts, he creates a darker, one-sided portrayal designed to provoke outrage rather than inform viewers. This isn't analysis. It's manipulation. The goal is simple. Keep the Trump hate cycle spinning at full speed, drown out nuance, and ensure every discussion starts and ends with distortion instead of reality.
There is no doubt.
There's no misinformation.
There's some disinformation from the left, but comparing it to what Donald Trump spews out every day, every week, comparing it to what Elon Musk is spewing out, unfortunately, on X, you sound like Brett Stevens now, with all due respect. It's a joke. That's a real time.
And you sound like him, who looks like Rachel Maddow.
You understand what I'm saying?
I've never argued with that. I've never argued that of a false equivalency. I just said there is misinformation from both sides.
Well,
I lived through COVID. Don't tell me there wasn't misinformation.
But there's a difference between...
I lived through stupid policies based on bad information and stifled information. That's what Zuckerberg said. He said they were forcing us not to put out...
The irony is impossible to ignore. Many on the left are guilty of the very behaviors they spent years accusing Trump of. It's projection in its purest form. As Bill Maher correctly pointed out, they've become just as reckless, if not worse, when it comes to spreading misinformation, with networks like MSNBC leading the charge. Need proof? There's no shortage of examples. The endlessly promoted Russia collusion narrative pushed by Rachel Maddow. The coordinated dismissal of the Hunter Biden laptop as disinformation. The nonstop repetition of the so-called fine people hoax. Time after time, MSNBC has amplified stories that later unraveled or collapsed entirely under scrutiny, that what's most disturbing isn't just the mistakes. It's the refusal to own them. Their own errors are quietly ignored or brushed off, while every word Trump utters is magnified, twisted, and framed as evidence of moral catastrophe. The imbalance is blatant. When Trump speaks, the knives come out. When left-wing politicians or media figures make demonstrably false claims, it's met with silence, excuses, or a convenient reframing as confusion. This isn't accidental. It's calculated. Selective outrage is a tool, not a flaw. It keeps audiences emotionally charged, locks them into a constant state of fear and anger, and preserves Trump as the permanent villain of the story. Because the moment they admit their own role in spreading falsehoods, the illusion collapses. They'd be forced to confront an uncomfortable reality, that they're no more honest, no more principled, and no better than the man they claim to stand against. And that's the truth they're desperate to keep hidden.
Change. So you consider yourself a liberal, right?
I consider myself an old school liberal. You have to make that distinction now because, you know, the word woke, which started out as a good thing, being alert to injustice, and a lot of people get triggered by the word because when they hear it, they think of it the old meaning, which was good.
Right.
You know, stay woke. But I'm sorry, language is a living, breathing entity. Words change and they migrate and they take on a different meaning. And woke now has to answer for people have just used the word to ascribe a number of extreme things on the left.
This is where Maher's argument starts to fall short. He presents wokeness as if it's confined to a small, overzealous corner of the left, a loud minority that doesn't truly represent the broader movement. That framing no longer holds up. What was once considered extreme has now become standard practice across liberal spaces. Today, this mindset dominates political messaging, shapes media coverage, and drives entertainment culture. It's not a temporary trend or a side conversation. It's the rulebook everyone is expected to follow. From Capitol Hill to cable news to Hollywood studios, the same ideological language and assumptions keep showing up everywhere. And when Maher laid that out, Scarborough had little to counter with. His silence spoke louder than any rebuttal. It's hard to argue against something you quietly recognize as true. The real issue now isn't whether Maher touched a nerve. It's how long figures like Scarborough can continue acting as if this shift hasn't already taken over the left's mainstream identity.
Kamala's big, I think, challenge here to win over the undecided voters is to convince them that she's not part of what they suspect she might be, sort of a stealth version of the worst excesses of the left. I said there's a coalition of Trump voters, people who really like him. They certainly are those. And then there's people who don't necessarily like him that much, but they still think he's less crazy than stuff that strikes them as aggressively anti-common sense that takes place on the left. So that's why they keep running that ad about sex changes in prison. You know, like could you,
and every football game.
Could you get every
football game?
Could you get more third rail words into one sentence?
That's the core of the issue. Someone like Kamala Harris would struggle to separate herself from the woke left, even if she wanted to, because she isn't standing near it. She's firmly embedded in it. This isn't a case of a few loud activists trying to hijack the party from the sidelines. This is the party's dominant identity. Look at the environment surrounding her rise. Her rallies weren't filled with moderates pushing back against cultural excesses. They were energized by voters who openly embraced them. Hollywood elites lined up to endorse her. Major media figures handled her with kid gloves, asking friendly questions and steering clear of uncomfortable topics. Stories that could complicate the narrative were quietly minimized or ignored altogether. That kind of coordinated support doesn't come from a fringe faction operating on the margins. It comes from an established political and cultural machine working exactly as intended. When entertainment, journalism, and party leadership all move in the same direction, that's not rebellion. It's consensus that the illusion needs to stop. Wokeness isn't an outlier within the left. It isn't optional, experimental, or controversial inside those circles. It's the standard operating system. The expectation, not the exception.
Have to, on the one hand, understand you benefited from racism if you're white. There's no doubt about it. And that has to be addressed. It can't be ignored. But also, I didn't personally do it. there's a middle ground there. It's very difficult.
Two things can be true at one time.
And they are both true at one time.
Right.
I'm not personally responsible, but did I benefit? Yes, I'm sure I did. People our age definitely did.
Right.
And so if we can all agree on things like that, we could then come up with sensible policy.
On this point, I agree with Maher. If there's any real hope of easing the ideological rift ripping this country apart, it starts with restoring balance. Government should be focused on solving real problems, not catering to one faction while dismissing everyone else. That means moving away from symbolic gestures and culture war theatrics and returning to policies that actually deliver results for the broader public, not just whoever shouts the loudest online. Take racism, for instance. It's a complex and deeply rooted issue that can't be fixed with quick fixes or headline-friendly reactions. Real progress requires careful, deliberate action, solutions that target genuine structural problems without creating new ones along the way. Unfortunately, that's not the approach we've seen. Programs like DEI were sold as tools to create fairness and opportunity, but in practice they produce serious unintended consequences. In some cases, they've compromised standards, disrupted workplaces, and even raised concerns around public safety. When ideology overrides common sense and measurable outcomes, the damage doesn't fall on one group. It spreads to everyone that if leadership continues to prioritize political signaling over practical governance, this divide will only deepen. Without a return to reason, restraint, and results-based policymaking, the country risks drifting even further apart.
But sometimes on the left, they don't want to acknowledge progress because it interferes with virtue signaling. Right. To say, we've come a long way, which we have.
It's okay to say that.
It's okay to say it, but somehow you're a better person if you say, but there's work to be done. Of course there's work to be done. There's always work to be done. We're humans. We're on Earth. There's always going to be work to be done. But let's be realistic about where we are.
Here, Bill Maher points out a striking irony. The left, which brands itself as the voice of progress, seems unwilling to admit that real progress has actually been made. Racism is still a serious issue. No honest person denies that, but it is not what it was in the 1960s or 1970s. Pretending America is frozen in the Jim Crow era isn't just misleading, it's intellectually dishonest. Acknowledging improvement doesn't erase remaining problems. It simply tells the truth, but that's where the resistance comes in. Much of the modern left refuses to recognize progress because their entire narrative depends on the idea that nothing has changed. For some, perpetual victimhood isn't just a belief system, it's a business model. Division sells. Outrage generates clicks, ratings, and relevance. Figures like Whoopi Goldberg, Sunny Hostin, and Don Lemon thrive in this environment. Their influence depends on keeping racial tensions inflamed, even if it means ignoring decades of measurable advancement. If society starts acknowledging genuine progress, their moral leverage, and the attention that comes with it begins to fade. While real change has undeniably occurred, there's a strong incentive for certain voices to deny it. This endless cycle of grievance isn't driven by a pursuit of justice. It's driven by profit, power, and audience retention. And as long as outrage remains lucrative, the truth will always be inconvenient.
Focus groups over the past couple of days of Trump voters who still would support him, who say things like, I like Donald Trump because of where he stands. I can't even say it with a straight face. On the issues. Now you tell me, what the fuck does that mean? What does he, what issues? But what issues does this guy share with conservatives?
Since you seem unwilling to acknowledge the issues that resonate most strongly with conservatives about Donald Trump, let me spell them out clearly. Trump has consistently defended core conservative principles, particularly on cultural issues. He has affirmed that there are only two genders, opposed the participation of biological males in women's sports, and rejected policies that allow men to use women's bathrooms. He has also supported parental consent laws to protect children from irreversible medical decisions related to gender transitions. These positions are not fringe beliefs among conservatives. They are foundational concerns rooted in fairness, safety, and parental rights. Beyond cultural debates, Trump has taken a hardline approach to national security. Under the Biden-Harris administration, the southern border has become dangerously porous, with illegal crossings surging and criminal elements exploiting weak enforcement. Trump's agenda prioritizes restoring border control, deporting violent offenders, and closing loopholes that threaten public safety and national sovereignty. He has also pushed for accountability within government institutions, calling out waste, fraud, and mismanagement, including efforts to recover taxpayer funds lost through corruption and bureaucratic failure. His emphasis on transparency and fiscal responsibility stands in sharp contrast to the current administration's record of unchecked spending and ineffective oversight. This is not an exhaustive list of Trump's policy positions or accomplishments, but it captures why so many conservatives continue to support him. Ignoring these facts doesn't make them disappear. It only highlights a refusal to engage honestly with viewpoints that challenge a preferred narrative. When facts are dismissed simply because they're inconvenient, the issue isn't Trump, it's bias.
Tell me about this, because now when you're an independent now.
Yeah.
So what does that say? That, to me, it says that you think the Republican Party is unsavable.
Unsavable. Oh, no doubt about it.
Because otherwise you would want to stay on, right, and reform it, but you think it
can't be saved.
It cannot be saved.
At the very least, one fact is now impossible to ignore. Under Donald Trump's leadership, the Republican Party has reclaimed the seat in decisive fashion, something none of the so-called electable Republican alternatives managed to accomplish for more than 20 years. This wasn't a narrow win or a lucky break. It was a commanding result that sent a clear message. The outcome went far beyond a single race. It functioned as a direct rejection of failed policies, ineffective leadership, and an out-of-touch political class that underestimated everyday Americans. Voters didn't just show up, they pushed back. They rejected the narratives, dismissed the empty promises, and made it clear they were done being ignored. This result reinforces what many have been saying for years. The MAGA movement isn't fading, it's consolidating. The so-called silent majority has stepped forward, and its voice is no longer easy to dismiss or downplay. For those who believe Trump's influence was finished, reality just delivered a wake-up call. This isn't politics returning to normal. It's a political realignment. The America First agenda isn't going anywhere, and the momentum behind it is only growing. That if the past 4 years felt turbulent, the next chapter promises to be even more disruptive. Change is coming, and it won't be subtle. That's where we'll leave it for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.